privacy issues. Dear learners, in this module, let us see about the privacy issues. Now, let us start with an introduction of privacy. Internet privacy, also known as online privacy, is concerned with the privacy and security level of personal information published through the Internet. It pertains to a number of techniques, factors and technologies that are used to protect private and sensitive data, preferences and communications over the Internet. Internet privacy encompasses the controlling of information an online user reveals about themselves and determining who has access to that information. Next, the learning objectives are: by the end of this module, one will be able to understand the concept of privacy, have in-depth knowledge about the risks of Internet privacy and how to overcome it. To explain in what ways are the Internet privacy affected. Be aware of the policies and privacy legislation in India. Elaborate the corporate email privacy. The concept of privacy is: we are currently living in the so-called information age, which can be described as an era where economic activities are mainly information based and the world has become more open. It can be described an age of information due to the development and use of technology. Privacy is defined as an individual requisite of life characterized by exclusion from publicity. Privacy is regarded as a natural right which provides the foundation for the legal right, and therefore, the right to privacy is protected under private law. Privacy is an important right because it is a necessary condition for other rights such as freedom and personal autonomy to exist. Hence, there is a strong bond between privacy, freedom and human dignity. Respecting a person's privacy is to acknowledge such a person's right to freedom and to recognize that individual as an autonomous human being. The right to privacy is confined by social responsibility, since the police may violate a criminal's privacy by spying or by seizing personal documents, and the government also has right to gather private and personal information from its citizens with the aim of ensuring order and harmony in society. Privacy as a moving target. Privacy has evolved with time and people define and value it differently, since privacy is often balanced against other values such as society's safety and security. With the technology revolution, the notion of privacy has started a new journey beyond the legal sphere to communicate with nearby computers and exchange data. Privacy as an issue of personal responsibility. Privacy is an issue of personal concern in the sense that it concerns the balance between public or personal security and liberty. The difficulty when it comes to the introduction of new technologies is the way in which these are used, perceived and handled, leading to the major concerns due to the widespread use of social networks. Once published in virtual space, the data never disappear without a trace, and hence the users have to carefully choose what they want to keep private in order to avoid the dangers of publishing private matters, since the Internet is in fact not a private sphere at all. What does Internet privacy actually mean? The ability for an individual to interact online without losing their personal privacy is a significant part of the Internet's value, which is intimately related to its trustworthiness. Due to the continuous growth of e-commerce, it has gained traction online, and Internet privacy has become vital for business owners and managed IT service providers. Internet privacy or online privacy is a serious concern for Internet users who visits social networking sites, makes an online purchase, or participates in online games as they wish for their privacy to be protected. Businesses and users are concerned about privacy threats and violations as the risk of information making its way into cyber criminals' hands is greater than ever before. Let us see what are the risks of internet privacy. In the digital world, we are being trapped in a system in which whatever we do is monitored and logged, which has pushed privacy as a thing of the past. Whatever we do using modern communications equipment, a digital trail is left which is followed assiduously by giant corporations, governments and their security services. The things to be considered when using the modern technology are: spyware is an application that gathers all data without the user's consent when offline and send the data to the spyware source when online. Malware is an application that harms both offline and online computer users via viruses, trojans and spyware. Web bugs are defined as the objects that can be embedded into an email or web page to check if a user has read a specific email or has visited a certain website which is usually unknown to the user. Phishing is a tactic used to steal secure user data including credit card numbers, usernames, passwords, security pins or bank account numbers through someone disguised as a trustworthy person by means of some form of electronic communication. Pharming is the tactic used by a hacker in attempt to redirect traffic from a legitimate website to an entirely different IP address by changing the host's file on a victim's computer. How to overcome the risks of internet privacy? The following list helps to overcome the risks of internet privacy to some extent. Avoid exposing personal data on websites with less security. Make sure that websites are secure and verify if HTTPS is used instead of HTTP. Use complicated passwords consisting of numerals, letters and special characters. Clear the history of your browser and cache regularly to ensure the browser is clear. Avoid shopping on websites that are not reliable. Use software applications such as anti-malware, anti-spam, antivirus and firewalls for protection. How is internet privacy affected? First, in email, most of the email services, Gmail etc., are susceptible because the real difficulty with email is securing the metadata. While there are ways of keeping the content of messages private, the metadata that is sent along with a message can be very revealing and it cannot be encrypted because it is needed by the internet routing system, hence available to most security services without a warrant. Encryption, being the sole province of mathematicians, has changed in recent years since various publicly available tools have taken the rocket science out of encrypting and decrypting email and files. These softwares scramble the data but does not protect you from the government authorities who demand the encryption key under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. The fundamental use of internet is web browsing since it is what internet users do most, hence it is worth taking browser security and privacy seriously. Configuring of browser is one of the ways to protect against tracking the online behavior. Fourth, in cloud services, the working assumption is that anything stored on such systems is potentially accessible by others. Therefore, if you must entrust data to them, make sure it is encrypted. In social networks such as Facebook, no matter what your privacy settings, you do not have control over information about you that is posted by a friend. Next, in location data, avoid using services that require location information. Sixth one is wireless services. Switch off Bluetooth by default in the mobile devices. Switch on only when in use. Avoid using open Wi-Fi in public places. Always secure your personal Wi-Fi connection using password. Last, in search engines, most of the search engines track search history and build profiles based on it to serve with personalized results. So, better switch on to a search engine that does not track your search history, thus escaping from the filter bubble. One of the most obvious and effective search engine is the DuckDuckGo. The online tracking is, have you noticed that many advertisements you see online hits your tastes and interests? The reason behind is that almost every major website you visit tracks your online activity, following you from site to site, track and compile your activity, and compile all the gathered information into a database. Perhaps almost all browsers gives the user some control over how much information is revealed, kept and stored. Therefore, the settings to restrict cookies must be set, thus enhancing your privacy. The tools used for online tracking. Some of the tools used to track you online includes cookies, flash cookies, fingerprinting and cross-device tracking. Cookies are defined as the piece of information on your hard drive sent by a web server to a user's browser gathered while visiting different websites. Cookies encompass information such as login identification, user preferences, online shopping cart information, etc. The web server makes use of the cookies to customize the display it sends to the user by keeping track of various pages within the site that the user accesses. We use the internet to complete the registration card through online mode for a product such as a computer or a refrigerator. The registration process we generally provide our name and address, which then may be stored in a cookie. There are two types of cookies, namely first party and third party cookies. The first party cookies are used by the legitimate websites to make special offers to returning users and to track the results of their advertising. The third party cookies are those which communicate data about an user to an advertising clearing house, which in turn shares that data with other online marketers using the user's online history to deliver other ads. The browser and some software products enable us to detect and delete all types of cookies. Flash cookies, also called as super cookies, are more persistent than a regular cookie, which is utilized by many websites. Erasing standard cookies, clearing history, clearing within the browser will not affect flash cookies, since they persist despite user efforts to delete all cookies. Flash cookies cannot be deleted by any commercially available anti-spyware or adware removal program except in the Firefox browser. There is an add-on called Better Privacy which assists in the deletion of flash cookies. Fingerprinting. A device fingerprint, also known as machine fingerprint, is the concise form of the software and hardware settings collected from a computer, and each device has a different clock setting, fonts, software which make it unique. When one goes online, the corresponding device broadcasts these details which are collected and combined together to form a unique fingerprint for that particular device. Fingerprint is then assigned an identifying number used for similar intentions as a cookie. Tracking companies are embracing the fingerprinting which is now replacing cookies because it is tougher to block than cookies. Unlike cookies which are subjected to deletion, expiration and is of no use if a user decides to switch to a new browser, fingerprinting leaves no evidence on a user's computer for you to realize when you are being tracked. Since fingerprinting is generally invisible and difficult to prevent, it is not easy to delete fingerprints that have been collected. One of the ways to prevent fingerprinting is to block JavaScript on their computer, but some of the part of a website may not load, resulting in a blank space on the web page. Cross-device tracking enables companies to link a consumer's behavior across all of their devices such as smartphones, tablets, desktop computers and other connected devices. Although this information serves many purposes, it is specifically valuable to advertisers for marketing purposes. Both deterministic and probabilistic techniques are used by companies to engage in cross-device tracking. The deterministic techniques are used to track characteristics such as a login, while the probabilistic techniques are used to infer which consumer is using a device even when a consumer has not logged into a service. Most browsers give access to a do not track DNT setting to keep your online activity from being followed across the internet by advertisers, analytics companies and social media sites. Current policy for internet privacy in India. Currently, India's most comprehensive legal provisions related to privacy on the internet can be found in the Information Technology Act ITA 2000. The ITA contains a number of provisions regarding safeguard online privacy, which encompasses penalizing child pornography, hacking and fraud, and defining data protection standards for body corporate. The ITA does not address issues and circumstances like the evidentiary status of social media content in India, merging and sharing of data across databases, the use of electronic personal identifiers across databases, and if individuals have the right to request service providers to take down and delete their personal content. Future frameworks for internet privacy in India. Future frameworks for internet privacy in India would apply to all data controllers both in the private sector and the public sector to ensure that businesses and governments are held accountable to protecting privacy and that legislation and practices found across sectors, states or governments, organizations and governmental bodies are harmonized. The privacy principles include notice, choice and consent, collection limitation, purpose limitation, access and correction, accountability, openness, disclosure of information, security, and also envisions a system of co-regulation in which the national privacy principles will be binding for every data controller. However, self-regulatory organizations at the industry level will have the option of developing principles for that specific sector, which has to be approved by the Privacy Commissioner and be in compliance with the national privacy principles. In addition to defining principles, the establishment of a Privacy Commissioner for overseeing the implementation of the right to privacy in India is recommended. A privacy legislation for India. Since 2010, there has been a strong public discourse around the need for a privacy legislation in India, and in 2011, the Department of Personnel and Training released a draft privacy bill that defined a privacy regime for data protection, surveillance and mass marketing, and recognized privacy as a fundamental right. Let us see about corporate email privacy. This should come as no surprise anymore. Email is one of the least secure methods of communication because they are stored at multiple locations such as on the sender's computer, internet service provider's server and on the receiver's computer. Even if we delete an email from our inbox, multiple other copies still exist out there as well, as easier for employers and law enforcement to access than phone records. Due to their digital nature, they can be retained for very long periods of time, so better don't set something in an email you don't want others to see. Email at work for employees. Most employers have an agreement signed by their employees on computer and network usage policy, which signifies that your email is to be used only for business purposes and permits the employer the right to monitor email and computer usage. Employers, unlike law enforcement, do not have very many obstacles preventing them from searching your emails, since the agreement denies the employee to expect privacy. Communications sent from their equipment and workplace could affect their business, which usually provides them with a justification to search through your emails, as well as work email was inherently work related, and thus there could be no reasonable expectation of privacy. Email at work for employers. On the converse, employers have a huge number of issues to be concerned about regarding email and email privacy. Basically, monitoring email at work is one way to ensure that employees are using work email appropriately so that they don't misuse it. The significant issue for most employers is liability, which tends to protect a business from being used is to monitor and prevent any harassment in the workplace. The Fourth Amendment, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act and the Patriot Act. Email privacy is derived from the Fourth Amendment to the US Constitution and is governed by the reasonable expectation of privacy standard. Unfortunately, given the open nature of email to pass through several devices and multiple storage locations, the expectation of privacy may be less for email, notably email at work. Emails are also governed by the Electronic Communications Privacy Act (ECPA) and the Patriot Act. Even though the ECPA originally set up protective ways to safeguard email, those protections have been weakened in many instances by the Patriot Act. Conclusion: Internet privacy has a wide range of issues such as privacy rights, that an individual has online with respect to their personal information and violations that happen online. Given the dynamic and open nature of the online sphere, privacy concerns and issues are changing all over the world at a rapid rate. Clearly, privacy is a prominent and increasingly important field in India's internet society. As online sites collect huge amounts of information from and about online users, and as the government continues to acquire greater access and surveillance capabilities, it is critical that India prioritizes privacy and puts in place strong safeguards to protect the privacy of both Indians and foreigners whose information resides temporarily or permanently in India. The first move towards this is the enactment of comprehensive privacy legislation to recognize privacy as a fundamental right. Thank you.